work together in pooling our resources, resources that we're increasing as part of our NATO pledges. How do we pool those and be more effective? Operation Cold Response, all of us involved in that with a number of other nations, is an example of a practical example of that. There are many others. So that's the first thing. The second, due to you referenced resources, and there are considerable resources, both physical, critical minerals, and for example in Norway, as well as other economies, Canada included. So how are we going to develop those ourselves with partners at speed and scale that are there? And then the last point I'll make and then hand over, which is, of course, security is much broader. The capabilities in space, the capabilities in AI, in quantum and others, again, where we have quite complementary skills. What we're doing, discussing, is how do we pool those, cooperate, again, positively take more responsibility, and we're solving issues for our citizens. That's our jobs. And in that regard, it reduces the threats.
Can I follow up briefly on that question? You know, Prime Minister Fredriksen gave praise to the speech that Prime Minister Carney gave. Let me give praise to the way the Danish Prime Minister has stood up for some principles which are absolutely key. For Denmark, for the Kingdom of Denmark, for the people in Greenland, it's for them to decide on what happens in the Kingdom of Denmark. But what she has stood up for is much more than that. It is for basic principles of international law, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity, which is not simply language in school books. This is hardcore realities of how we preserve freedom, democracy, and we have stood by these principles because we are close to Denmark in this Nordic family, but also because it really matters to all of us. And I'd like to also to say that this is responding to threats which are unacceptable in general, but even more unacceptable among allies. But I would say what follows from this is also a great range of opportunities, which we have discussed around the table today. That our countries have things that we can do together, that we will do together, because it's really beneficial for our populations, for their work, for their income, for their security. And meetings like the one we had today is really helping us to launch on that path.
And the next question comes from Maria Andersen, Denmark's Radio.
Yes, and I have a question for Prime Minister Mark Carney, but also for the four Nordic leaders of Denmark's neighbors. Here you are side by side talking about the importance of unity. If a country within the NATO alliance tries to take over Greenland, would Canada then be ready to contribute with military forces and actually put up military resistance to protect Greenland?
Well, the first thing I'd say, thank you for the question. We stand foursquare behind the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity. It is for the people of Greenland and Denmark to decide their futures. And first point, being absolutely clear about that, being clear that we will back that with measures as necessary as a partner, and being I think the fact that we and others have been clear, I don't want to put it on Canada, but European Union and others have been clear about these fundamental principles and the principle of solidarity has helped to create the space, which always should have been there, to be clear, to develop a better security umbrella in the Arctic, but also including Greenland. So we're clear on where we stand, and we will continue to stand with Denmark and Greenland. Thank you.
If I were to respond on behalf of Norway, we are part of an alliance based on collective security. And what we have done over the last year, the Arctic 7, is to develop the script on how NATO will look after security in all of Arctic. We have our more geographic close parts of the Arctic, where NATO has been present, has had the strategy and regional plans for a couple of decades. And now we are broadening that. So I would approach that question by saying, you know, that NATO allies stand together, and we have developed plans to deliver on that.
And I think it's fair to say that we quite recently fully and firmly proved that we stand behind Denmark.
Yes, we stand fully behind Denmark, and we will. And I'm proud how united we were a few months ago, and we need to continue. But what is important now is strengthen Arctic security together. And from my perspective, Arctic security is one of our biggest concerns. Arctic starts from our eastern border and continue to the Greenland and Canada. That's why we need to work together and strengthen Arctic security.
The next question comes from the Swedish news agency, TT. Henrik Samuelsson.
This question is mostly for Prime Minister Carney, but also for Prime Ministers Kristersson and Støre. There's been reports in the last few days about intensifying Canadian interest in acquiring submarines from Norway, Germany, and fighter jets from Sweden. Can you say if this was discussed at all today, and also the significance of this type of military hardware operation in this new security, global security environment of today?
Okay, well, let me answer the specific, but let me make a couple of general points, which is that we have a procurement process, particularly for the submarines, which is at a stage where the final bids, there are 2 final bids for those submarines. Those are in and they're being studied and worked through by an independent process. So it's not for me to comment on that, and we're not having discussions about the specifics of that. But your question is very well motivated, and it's part of the spirit of what we've been discussing, which is that we are all making significant additional investments in our defense and security to protect our peoples, given the threats that have gone up immeasurably, well, measurably, but significantly. We all agree that that if we individually spend that money, or we spend it in an uncoordinated way, it's not going to be value for taxpayers. It also will not protect our people as much as we should, and it will not have spillover economic benefits to create good jobs and better futures for our citizens. And this is where the complementarities come in. So expertise in aerospace, expertise in maritime, expertise across here in just a whole range of domains, including all aspects of artificial intelligence, material science, and beyond. And so we're looking for specific opportunities in order to develop in a way that is mutually beneficial. I'll finish with this fact, which is historically, when Canada has made defense procurement, 70 cents on the dollar, more than 70 cents on the dollar, has gone to the United States. Not just to American companies, but gone to the United States. That's not an effective way to build our industry or to protect our people. And so what we've been doing, we will still do a lot of procurement with the United States, to be absolutely clear, but in all cases looking to procure much more in partnership, and it's a much broader range of countries with whom we can partner. Last point, particularly given the maritime and Arctic nature of the security needs we have, plus the virtual, the Nordic countries are natural partners for Canada, the short answer.
If I may just, I have 100% respect for that process that Canada is now undertaking when it comes to submarines. That's a big undertaking. But for Norway's part, when we are doing this kind of maritime cooperations as we do with frigates with the United Kingdom and submarines with Germany, it is a big industrial adventure. But beyond security and industry, it is really also creating unity of purpose when it comes to security. Because you are in a way integrated in a way you work together, which is linked to geography, the way you are operational, and you'll basically have the same equipment, the same standards. And that, of course, is also important from a security perspective.
Good example on cooperation in military industry and security is our cooperation to build icebreakers with Canada.
Yeah. Very good.
And the next question comes from Iltalehti in Finland. Anni Emilia Allentola.
Thanks. This is about the nuclear weapons, and it's for all of you. What are your thoughts about opening a discussion in your country, in your own countries, about loosening restrictions or policies when it comes to nuclear weapons, even during the peacetime? Thanks.
Maybe I can start. I want to say that Finland does not seek to have nuclear weapons to our territory, and nor is NATO making any such plans. What we are doing at this moment in Finland is our purpose of the government is to remove legal barriers which do not exist in this form in the other Nordic countries. On nuclear weapons, the initiative to adopt the French nuclear deterrence to increase wider European security, it was positive, but Finland has not had similar discussions as some other countries who are also presented here, but we are interested to hear more because we need to strengthen European deterrence.
I think the most, and following up on what Petri just said, I think the most important thing is to build a stronger NATO and European nuclear deterrence. It is a part of our overall deterrence of Europe and NATO, and therefore from a Danish perspective, we are now doing two things at the same time. We are deepening our engagement in NATO when it comes to nuclear deterrence, and at the same time we have accepted an invitation from France when it comes to deepen our cooperation with them. And I think it's positive from a European and from a Danish perspective also to be stronger in this area, but it has to go alongside with many other capabilities and many other investments as we are doing at the same time.
Well, for Norway's part, we are not changing legislation. We don't have to. We have our clear policy. There will be no stationing on nuclear weapons in Norway. We are a member of an alliance which has a key nuclear deterrent, which was confirmed at the recent NATO summits, and that is there. The French initiative, we have not been involved in the early stages of that, but we are ready to talk to France as we develop a strategic partnership with France on defense. To hear more about how their plans are, and obviously that is something which will go on for some time, but the key thing here is not to weaken what is already the nuclear deterrent of NATO, upon which we all depend.
Yes. Canada does not seek nuclear weapons. There's no change in policy there. We, as others do, benefit from our membership of NATO, an alliance which does have a nuclear deterrent at its heart, as you know. I'll make two final comments. One is commend President Macron's initiative to provide a layered element to that deterrence. The modalities and the breadth of that, of course, to be worked out, but we commend that initiative from a NATO perspective, from a European security perspective. It's not directly affecting Canada. And then the last thing, which is not nuclear per se, but I just underscore in terms of the changing threat environment, the risk to Canada from new missile systems, hypersonic missiles and others, is necessitating big investments, including in over-the-horizon radar and beyond, in order to have a deterrence there.
Yeah, and I can easily echo what Mette Fredriksen just said, that we stand fully behind the NATO's common nuclear deterrence. We have no plans at all to change our own doctrine regarding nuclear weapons, and that does not exclude in any way our future potential cooperation with France when we now initiate this dialogue with France.
Yeah, on Iceland's part, we don't see any changes coming up. We only just recently said yes to nuclear-powered submarine stocking in our waters. That was a big step for us. So, I mean, we are still under our ongoing strong partners of NATO, and we don't see any changes to that nuclear umbrella.
The last question today comes from Gladys Fouché, Reuters.
Good morning. My question is about Arctic Century and is for each of you. What is the #1 challenge, whether short-term or long-term, that you want Arctic Century to help you solve?
The biggest, I'll start. Look, the biggest security threat, physical security threat in the Arctic is Russia. And there are various aspects of that. There are other layered threats in there, but first and foremost, and consistent with many of the other aspects of NATO security development, is unfortunately it is a common threat, and that is the case in the Arctic. First point. Second, I just underscore that it is welcome, arguably overdue, but welcome, that now NATO is focusing increasingly on Arctic security, and Arctic Sentry obviously is a manifestation of that. It needs to be fully developed, and what you're hearing from all of us is the commitment in order to do that.
Peter?
Can I just add, I totally agree with Mark, and what we have seen until now has been different kind of training activities and so on. I think what is most important about Arctic Sentry is that we now want to be permanent present in the Arctic region. And by the way, as everybody knows, in the Arctic region, it's enormous, and there are a lot of differences in the region. But to be permanent present and to also have the support from the rest of NATO, because as Arctic states, I mean, we have been aware about the security situation, of course, for many years, and as Mark just said, it is changing because of Russia. But now we have the support from the rest of NATO. We need to be permanent present. We need to be strong on surveillance, and we need, of course, together to invest in the needed capabilities, and by common procurement, by common investments, and by this framework that has been decided on, I think we are in a much better and in a much stronger position now to protect the Arctic region.
Can I say that if you think about NATO's presence in the Arctic and you go 20 years back in time, it was very little. Yeah. And we have worked on Arctic nations to bring the Arctic to the center of attention of NATO, because NATO should matter to all of NATO territory. So I would say that this initiative should respond to security and stability. And right now, as we speak, we have 34,000 troops exercising in northern Finland and northern Norway. That's a NATO exercise being led for the circumstances in that part of the Arctic. And now we are also developing capacities tailored to the challenges in broader parts of the Arctic. So this is the right thing to go. You don't need the same response at every place, but I agree with Prime Minister Carney that Russia is a defining threat. On the longer horizon, you can see China, you can see other dimensions, and we should, prepare in time for that. Mm-hmm.
Can I come in on that? I think this is exactly what we were discussing in the beginning of sort of, I hate to call this a silver lining, but I mean, the countries in this region have for a while been talking about increased presence. For NATO, we discussed this in Jeff with the Joint Expeditionary Forces. And even for a country like Iceland that doesn't have a military, we have a lot of personnel and support capacities that need to have training, need to have